What's up everyone, and welcome to ClearTalk. So in this video we are going to be talking about gerontocracy, median age generation getting fed up and tired, future versus nostalgia, and Watergate babies, and how all that actually comes together. So it's this, forewarning, this could be a long video, all right? So thank you very much for joining me here. Welcome to the channel. If you would like to check out more from the channel, please do so. There's links in the description down below to this channel and to all my other channels. So if you would like, please check out those as well. All of that's free for you and helps out the channels tremendously. It's subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting, all that good stuff. That would be amazing. If you want to go further, there's a Patreon link there. $2 a month, support any of the channels that you would like to help grow those channels, help grow Patreon, help grow JMD Nation, and contribute to that how you would like to, along with the link there for merchandise. I have merchandise for every single channel, so check that out as well. If you like something, get it. If you're a Patreon member, you get a discount on that merch, so even more reason to become a Patreon member. But either way, any support you decide to give is very much appreciated, and I thank you very much. And if you're returning, you're freaking amazing. Welcome back, and keep coming back, because you're what makes JMD Nation. Okay, so we are, yes, at the fire pit. I didn't say that off the bat, I apologize. But what does all this have to do with each other? Because I started this with one train of thought, and then that sort of bridged and multiplied into multiple different things that I connected. And while I should probably do two separate videos on this, I honestly don't know how to separate it, because it kind of all goes together. So I have seen here recently this growing sentiment, particularly in millennials, Gen X's too, but very much in millennials, of just growing tired, growing sick and tired of the way things are going, and having this sort of, I think, even somewhat of a regretful nostalgia. Every generation has nostalgia, I think. You know, everybody has a degree of nostalgia for your childhood, for your past, for simpler times. But understanding the problems and issues of those simpler times also does not need to be forgotten, and how, you know, we have grown from those problems, or whether we have grown from those problems, because you don't want to, even if we weren't able to, like, just to say, if we were able to create our old life again, you know, if we were to bring back, even in the concept of MAGA, like, even if you were to bring back the idea of this nostalgic past, this better time that you hold in this capsule in your head, you wouldn't also at the same time want to bring forward all the troubles and issues of that time, right? Because there were, you know, still a lot of troubles and issues of that time. And I think that's a battle that oftentimes every generation has. But particularly middle generations, I would say from the ages of 30, at least 30 to 50, but probably 30 to 60-ish, somewhat, I would consider median age. Probably 30 to 55. Because, and this is a troublesome time. You could even argue, you know, maybe to some degree, why some median generations wind up having, you know, midlife crises, I guess you could say. Because there's this sentiment, I think, with any median generation within any particular time and moment, where you are fighting between the older generation and the newer generation, and you're wind up being this bridge between the two. An older generation that's growing older and is like not really that concerned with the new things that are happening, and they're more concerned with their own personal just life finishing out or whatever, holding what control they have or wealth they have or whatever the case that they've built over their entire life. And so there's a lack of concern with the future, right? And then you have the new generation that is not quite old enough or understanding enough to, for one, have lived in or seen or know anything about the old generation, and not concerned with learning from the past whatsoever. They're just focused solely on the present. So there's this balance that the middle generation has to do, where we're trying to bridge between those two and be like, and trying to rationalize and reason with those two generations, and not completely understanding both, right? And this happens, I'm even like, say, with my parents' generation. They would have went through more of like your Jim Crow time, things like that, trying to bridge between the generation before, the new generation coming up, and trying to be reasoned there, which probably brought its own problems because of, you know, conflict themselves and how they were even feeling about the situation. And that's, I think, that's just an example. And I think our millennial age is trying to deal with a multitude of things, maybe even more than ever before, because we are trying to deal again with, we especially millennials, we become between two centuries, two trains of two, like, centrally two different centuries of like the system of life, the system of the existence, the system of how which we live in, right? Where in, you know, 20th century is more, it looks more analog, it looks more, you know, old school, and then the 21st century being this full-on digital everything, you know, because we lived with literally within the time of having no computers, everything being analog, to, at this point, damn near everything, or at least the tendency for everything to be completely digital and computerized, and so it's along with the battle of generational war issues and things, you know, government, seeing the separation of gap, you know, continuing to grow again, or has been growing through our entirety of our lives. There's multitudes of things that we have had to deal with within our lives, that we're trying to bridge between an older generation that doesn't quite get this newer generation of life and wealth and who's holding the power and control, or doesn't really care about the future of any of that, and then the newer generation that is, unfortunately, I think for them, brought up in this fully digital age, fully encased in war, and it just, there's a lack of understanding, or I guess appreciation, maybe, is I guess a thought, for things being not like that. I don't know, and just expecting, like, the newer generations, they just come up accepting what is, because they didn't know any different, I guess you could say. So this is the issue that I think, and the reason why my generation of millennials and Gen X have are coming to this point where we're just sick and tired, because we're seeing, we were sold and we saw the times of the analog, which is, we're nostalgic for those old times and simplicity of life to some degree, but we also came through the age of digital development, and computer development, where we could see, and we were even sold on the benefits of that, and we saw the benefits of that and how much it has improved life, has improved our capability of information and knowledge, and our ability of learning, and more access to learning, to some degree, whether good or bad. But I mean, we came up seeing and understanding how technology could improve our lives, but at this point we're also seeing how those in power and those the intentions for the future in manipulating and using that technology to quite literally control us, that we would be so embedded in it that it's looking like we're quite literally moving, and the concerns around the security state, right? And not having any privacy, not having any individualism, you know, or being able to have a thought or an opinion or whatever, like the little bit of the slow eroding. Well, actually, at this point, it's actually rapidly eroding our freedoms, freedom around speech and thought and opinion and or even movement, right? We're seeing this concern, and we're trying to warn. We're trying to warn both the old generation and the new generation of these concerns. We're the reason why I feel like our generation is the most outspoken, and potentially, probably, that is the case in any particular time, is the most outspoken against the issues of that time, trying to get the older generation to understand, because a lot of times the older generation is the ones that has the most power and control, and then getting the new generation to understand, because they are the future and they need to, you know, understand what it would take to protect from things getting out of control, right? We're wanting the older generation to put things into place and to understand that things could get out of control, but the new generation warning them that if they also don't pay attention, you know, they could be faced with something that's out of control, and they, you know, will just have to deal with it, and that's or they will be put in a spot to have to fight even more than we are trying to fight. And I find that, again, a reason why this generation is feeling tired and worn out, feeling like if we do not push back and we do not stand up at this point, that things are going to get out of control, and we honestly don't want to live or see our children live, or the next generation live through that. So, in speaking about all this, I'm looking, again, talking about the gerontocracy of it all, and how we have had a growing rise in age of those that are quote-unquote in power, those in quote-unquote in Washington. And this is has happened over the past few decades. The rising, you know, the idea of people in Washington and Congress having no age limits, having no term limits, and people are continuously growing older and older and continuing to stay in there. The ever-growing aging of Congress, right? And how the problem we have with trying to fight back, and them having that control at this point, and us trying to persuade them to do something, but them not really having the will to do so, is a growing problem with that as well. And we are very much looking like we are about to have potentially another Watergate baby situation. And if you do not understand or know what that is, back in the Watergate scandal in the 1970s with the Nixon and everything that happened with the Republican Party then, where you had the scandal of someone breaking into the Democratic center or whatever, I can't remember exactly what it was, the DNC like main headquarters thing or whatever, stealing information and stuff to try to benefit Nixon and his campaign, helping him get elected. And this was all attached, the person that did it was attached to the Reagan campaign, and I mean, I'm sorry, not the Reagan, the Nixon campaign, and that, you know, created that whole situation where investigations happened, the corruption, and Nixon eventually having to just resign from the presidency under pressure. And then because of this sentiment of all of that happening, and the anger of the population, particularly the median age population, there was a push to take back control of Washington, to change the way things had been, because for before that there had been generational age growth, rise in age, to a gerontocracy then, where there was an ever-aging Congress that weren't doing anything, they weren't helping and benefiting anything, and so there was this intent to take over Washington by the younger generation, or the median generation, and basically rewrite how Congress runs. The removing of campaign contributions, or regulating campaign contributions more, so that there wasn't as much money in politics, trying to decrease that down. There was a lot of the things that you are currently seeing and talked about right now when it comes to the progressive movement. This was all being done through the Democratic Party. Okay, you had Republicans in control. They've been running things, allowing things to become corrupt and everything, and then you had Democrats, younger Democrats, okay, trying to push out the older Democrats, because the older Democrats were more of your Southern Confederacy Democrats. This was the time where the parties started to flip and switch, okay, because they knew that they were in compliance with a lot of the Republicans and what the Republicans were changing into. So they were trying to push them out and trying to actually move in the more, what became a more moderate, a more modern Democratic Party at that time, a more progressive Democratic Party, the more FDR type Democratic Party, and they basically were considered the Watergate babies, because we went from having at the time one of the oldest Congresses to one of the youngest Congresses in history. Where I think the median age was like 48 or 49. The youngest in history was the very first Congress, because that was the very beginning of the country and whatever, and it was like 44 then. But that Congress in 1975 was one of the youngest. I think it was maybe the second youngest ever, and it was around, I think the median age was around 48, 49, which right now we are sitting at the third highest in history right now, the previous two being the highest, okay? But we are sitting at the third highest at like 58 years old. And that, and that's the median. I think it's 57 in the House and like 64 in the Senate, is the median age. And so we're looking at this as we have had a growing, this is very much what's happening currently, is the same situation or very similar situation to what happened back in the 70s, but in the early 70s. Where we're very much possibly going to have a major blue wave happen, democratic wave happen, but it's going to be of younger Democrats, trying to take over the Senate, trying to take over the House, and quite literally put it, change what's going on. It could potentially reverse the whole I can't think of it right now, where the money in politics situation, and trying to revert a lot of these things that are happening in Congress, or not happening in Congress rather, because we're sick and tired of the Democrats that are this establishment corporate Democrats that have been basically just getting along, corrupt and going along to get along. The Republicans ever growing further and further right, and corrupt in their own way, and so I think there's this major growing sentiment and anger in the population right now, and particularly your millennial Gen X generation, where we have seen all of these different things and all the different facets and categories in the economy and life, overseas with wars. I mean, we've almost grown up our entire lives with some sort of war happening, and we're sick and tired of it. We're sick and tired of constantly seeing the abuse of that when it comes to the economy, and prices going, be over and beyond unaffordable for everybody, and nothing being done about it. Life just continuously getting harder and harder for our generation and even the next generation. And then on top of that, the control state, and this growing sentiment from all of these corporations and stuff, the subscriptionizing of everything. It's crazy, and there needs to be a push for control and pullback and regulation on all of this, and more thought put in to preventing all of these authoritarian tendencies. And I think that all of this anger and frustration and just people being sick and tired has grown us to this point where we are very much probably about to see a new Watergate baby situation happen. Trumpgate, MAGAgate, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, is going to happen, if not in these elections, by 2028 most certainly. And especially with the concern around the controlling of our elections that this administration is trying to do, which for them is probably a way of trying to make sure that this doesn't happen, that they are able to maintain control and maintain their power, maintain their gerontocracy, their wealth-tocracy, that they have put into place. So it's just something that have been thinking about and looking at, and trying to understand patterns of generations, and the swaying of our government and policies, and that whole argument about things every 50 to 70 years or so coming back around full circle, because we wind up getting so far away from like understanding or knowing the history, that we take it for granted and don't realize that it is now, right back in our face at our back door. And so we're having to then again push and fight to push it away, the bad things of history, or the things that we thought we fixed, we thought we moved on from, and then suddenly here they are at our back door again, like racism, like voter suppression, Jim Crow stuff that we're seeing here. I mean, this constant thought of, again, things that we thought we had done dealt with. We thought we had done understood and dealt with not wanting forever wars and stuff, and we were, moving away from that. We were on the verge of flipping that around, and then suddenly here we are again, without anybody really, I think, fully expecting it. But here we are again, right on the verge of another forever war. I mean, these things constantly, or a war like Vietnam, where we should not have gotten into, and it will be a complete disaster for this country. I mean, we're seeing these things come over. It's like not learning from the past, not learning from history, and we don't want to be that generation that didn't learn from history, especially a generation that grew up in the time where information has become right at our fingertips. We do not have an excuse to not learn from history, to not understand history, and to not see, because of that ability to understand, not see it repeating itself. There's just no excuse for it. And so I think there's a growing sentiment within our generation to not be those useful idiots, I guess. But we have to also, at the same time of fighting that and pushing back on that and making sure that we don't become that and that we don't allow history to repeat itself, we also need to make sure that we are ingraining in the next generation that same sentiment, and make sure that they don't forget what is going on, and that this is repeating itself, so that it doesn't repeat again when they are our age, or allow the conditions for it to repeat again for their children's generation. We must start learning. There's no excuse anymore to not learn from the past. And to teach our children to learn from the past. Because we have all the information right at our fingertips now. There's no question on whether or not something was true or false, or because we literally have it right available to us. Again, there's a concern around AI, I know, for the future, and trying to manipulate facts and understanding and reality. But I don't think even though we're right on the beginnings of that, I don't think we're far enough along to not understand history, not know the truth. which I think is what is perplexing the older generation right now that's in power, and their disbelief that we don't believe them. That they think that they can just get over on us, lie to our faces, because I think they quite literally still think they're living in their own time, and not realizing that, or they don't understand that they can't just manipulate reality and information in this new age just by speaking words and trying to, recreate that reality. So I may have went off tangent here. I may have went off a little bit of the main point, and I apologize, but I think it all sort of ties together in some weird way. But yes, I do think that there's a growing anger in our generation trying to balance, like a lot of generations have to when they are in that moment, trying to balance between the older and the new, trying to warn between conditions that the older generation has not done enough to actually address, and the new generation doesn't know how to address. And our generation even more so, because we have everything we need at our fingertips to make sure that that doesn't happen. And so I think that it is pivotal for us to do so, to use this time, to use this moment, use this movement, use this anger, use this frustration to actually implement some serious changes, much like in the Watergate baby situation, to take over Congress, take over Washington, and actually implement in things to, once again, things that have gotten out of control, much like back then, address those things and fix them in a reasonable way so that they don't happen again. Hopefully. And one little side note, I think I'm gonna give some weird credit here, although it's don't take it the wrong, don't take it solely like full on as credit, but I think that the Republican, the MAGA, I think that they wanted their Watergate baby moment. I think that's what they thought they were doing when they chose someone like Trump, who was speaking about, the swamp, removing the swamp from Washington, which they identify similarly to what we would identify as corruption and problem. But the issue and the difference is that MAGA targets were too specific and too personal and too selfish, because they were really only wanting to target things that they found was in opposition or against their own personal benefits, where the progressive movement that is working itself through the Democratic Party and will more than likely be what I think is going to happen as this whatever MAGA-gate, Trump-gate baby potential situation scenario, is that it's focused, like much like them, focused more on actually benefiting everybody. MAGA tried to have their Watergate baby moment, but they chose the wrong leader. And they not only did they choose the wrong leader, but they chose the leader and it thought the leader was going to take care of it all without them actually putting in any work. And that, I think, was their fault too. Again, they were doing it for more personal, selfish reasons, which doesn't work. Because if you're not working for the fairity of the entire civilization, of the entire country, and everybody that is a part of this country, then you're not actually going to find compassion and acceptance from the entirety of the country. That's the problem with Washington right now, and why MAGA thought that they would be able to really just do the same thing as Washington, but just for their own personal benefits, and everybody was going to just be like, yay, thank you, whatever. Anyway, just a little side note. But yeah, I think that we potentially could see a very massive movement in Washington in the coming years. I don't know that it will necessarily happen in November, although that could wind up being the start of it. But we very well could wind up having some major changes here within the coming few years, the coming next couple of elections at the very least, that in some way, form, or fashion will look very much like the Watergate baby situation back in the 70s, and a change in Congress, a euthanizing of Congress, because we are just tired of the control that the older generation has and the unwillingness from them to actually do, or the care and concern for the future enough to actually implement what it needs to be implemented to make sure that we even have a reasonable future, which is oftentimes the problems that occur in a developing gerontocracy, where the old people hoard and have all the power and control. You just because they wind up only benefiting themselves and not concerning themselves with the lower generations in the future. So thank you very much for joining me, and let me know what you think. And until next time, peace. JMD for ClearTalk. I'm out.